Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Module 1 of the Stormwater Management Design Review course. We will be getting started in just a few minutes. My name is Mesh Patel. I'm an environmental engineer within the Division of Watershed Protection and Restoration. I'd like to welcome you to the latest Stormwater Management Design Review course. Each module is going to have a moderator, and today that's going to be Cheng-Yi Wu. Staff will be presenting as a four-part course the key elements of the stormwater management design review process in order to assist you in complying with these stormwater management rules at NJEC 7:8 and as required by the Municipal Separate Storm Sewer System Permits, or MS4 permits. We will be presenting this course fully online via Microsoft Teams. So before I present the course agenda, I'd like to go over a few course rules. I'd like to give notice that this module and the subsequent modules, they will be recorded, as Lisa stated earlier. The videos will be posted on YouTube, and links will be included on the Stormwater Management webpage for future reference. Web link to our webpage was emailed to you in the invite, which will bring you to our PowerPoint slides of each presentation. And they will also remain available on the webpage for some time to be reviewed and or downloaded for future reference. In order to receive a certificate of completion and the certificate of the professional engineer's continuing professional competency credits, you will need to complete all 4 modules, including the quizzes. If you don't complete all 4 modules in this training session, you'll need to make up the missing module in the next training session before we can issue the certificate of completion and the certificate of CPCs. After completion of all 4 modules, you will receive a certificate of 12 CPCs and a certificate of completion. The schedule is compressed from our classroom setting, so we will move along at a brisk pace with short 1 to 2 minute breaks between the individual presentations. Although we are allowing time for questions at the end of each presentation, if you could please use the chat function for each meeting to enter your questions as we go. We will be reviewing the chat as we go along and plan to answer the more general type of questions during the presentation. However, more individualized and site-specific questions will need to be addressed offline after the class. Also, with so many people online for this training, enrollee microphones will be muted, but we can unmute if you do want to ask a question verbally. And lastly, as I mentioned earlier, there will be an online quiz at the end of each module that will have around 10 to 15 minutes to complete. You must take the quiz during the time allotted, and you cannot go back after that time has ended. This is in part a tracking mechanism in order to provide credit for the course. After each quiz, we will present the correct answers in our quiz review. Please try your best so that we can grade ourselves on how well we've covered the material. If you weren't able to download the slides from the link in the email, they can still be accessed under this website, which will be pasted in the chat by staff. Here's a snapshot of what the handouts page will look like. You can download slides for each presentation in each module. Shown here are the individual presentation slides for Module 1. The links are embedded in each blue box, so just click the box that matches which presentation you want to view. And that will bring us to our agenda. The agenda for Module 1 begins with Suna Sinar, who will provide the introduction and the federal background. Peter Plianthos will then present the stormwater overview of basic concepts and terms. You'll then hear from me on maintenance requirements, and Lisa Schaefer will present on the mapping requirements from the MS4 permits. Each of the modules includes a quiz to be taken online during the time allotted, as I stated earlier, and we will close this quiz and review the quiz questions. We will provide links and QR codes to the quizzes in the chat and on the slides. It is suggested you use your cell phone camera and focus it on the QR code that will be shown on the screen, and that will take you to the quiz on SurveyMonkey. If you're going to take the quiz on your computer, be sure to open the quiz link in a new window or tab so that you will also remain in Microsoft Teams. Module 2 for Thursday will start with Anthony Roblick, who will present the stormwater calculations. Lisa Schaefer will then present the soils testing criteria that was previously published as Appendix E of the BMP manual and is now incorporated as Chapter 12 of the BMP manual. And our last speaker for Module 2 will be Dick McGee from NJCAT, who will present information pertaining to MTDs. Module 3 for Tuesday, December 12th, will start with Anthony Roblick and I presenting how to review a Project 1. And then Chengyi Yu will be presenting Part 2 of how to review a project. And then Peter will be presenting the groundwater mounding analysis as per Chapter 13, along with some examples. Then we'll have Quiz 3, and if time permits, we will briefly cover some of the common issues we've seen in designs. Lastly, Module 4 will take place on December 14th. The first presentation covers the stormwater management rule amendments pursuant to the adoption of the Inland Flood Protection Rule on July 13th. We will also cover green infrastructure and how to evaluate GIBMPs from design examples. Then, as time allows, we will cover some additional stormwater-related program updates. One very important reminder before we start. After the class is over, we will be emailing out a link to an evaluation survey only to those who have completed all 4 modules, including all the quizzes. We're required to collect an evaluation in order to issue continuing education credits. Only after you submit your evaluation survey, you'll be sent your certificate of completion and/or PE credits once staff creates them. That should hopefully occur about 2 to 4 weeks after the class has finished. You'll be marked as having completed the rule amendment training requirement under the permit, but we will not issue an additional credit for this as that would make it double credit. With that being said, we will start with the introductory history lesson and basics of the permits, which we are including based on feedback we received from our permittees during the MS4 audits. So please stand by while we switch over to Suna.
Thank you, Manesh. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Stormwater Management Training course. My name is Suna, and today I will be providing you with a brief history of the federal basis for the Municipal Stormwater Regulation Program, as well as a brief introduction to some of the permit requirements that you will hear more about throughout the training. Please save your question for the end of the section. You can use the raise your hand function if you want to speak or type your questions. Shown here are some of the terms we frequently use in our program. This presentation will provide an overview of the history of these words and how they are part of a stormwater program. To start, we will have to take a look back to about 70 years ago. The Federal Water Pollution Control Act of 1948, also known as the FWPCA, paved the way as it was the first major U.S. law to address water pollution. It authorized the Surgeon General to prepare comprehensive programs for reducing the pollution of interstate waters. It also authorized the Federal Work Administrator to prevent discharge of inadequately treated sewage and other waste into interstate water and tributaries. Sorry, something. I'm sorry. Excuse me. Excuse me. Now let's forward about 20 years later to Cleveland, Ohio, to Cuyahoga River runs north through the heart of Cleveland toward Lake Erie and was an historical shipping road. At the time, Cleveland was emerging as a major center for manufacturing, and because of this, the river became heavily affected by industrial pollution to the point that it was covered with oil and debris. On June 22, 1969, spark from a passing train were all it took to start a fire. It was reported that these flames reached up to 5 stories in height. This was not the first time it happened, as there were more than a dozen fires over the preceding years. However, this was the event that sparked people's attention. A few months later, the National Environmental Policy Act, NEPA, was signed into law, and on January 1, 1970, creating the EPA. In 1972, amendments were made to the Federal Water Pollution Control Act from 1948, with the resulting legislation becoming known as the Clean Water Act. It is in Section 402 of this document in which the National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System (NIPDES) program was created, which prohibits discharges of pollutant from any point source into the nation's water except as allowed under a NIPDES permit. Because of this program, the EPA is authorized to regulate discharge into nation's water by setting limits on the effluent that can be introduced into a body of water from an operating and permitted facility. NIPDES also established the requirements for what a state must do to obtain approval to implement and operate its own program. New Jersey received federal authorization to implement various NIPDES program components in 1982, including authorizations for a state pretreatment program to regulate federal facilities and issue general permits. This program is known today as NJPDES. This is the framework through which the New Jersey DEP regulates the discharge of pollutants to the surface and groundwaters for the entire state. 1 year later, in 1983, New Jersey proposed and published a new rule establishing certain effluent limitations for discharge to surface waters of the state and for indirect discharges into domestic treatment works, including discharges resulting from different precipitation events. 4 years later, the Water Quality Act was passed, which called for increased monitoring and assessment of water bodies to ensure that water quality standards were being achieved. In November of 1990, the EPA published initial permit application requirements for certain categories of stormwater discharges, which was called Phase 1. Nearly a decade later, Phase 2 provisions were published and directly affected stormwater management for municipalities and public complexes, which include places such as large public colleges, prisons, hospitals, complexes, and military bases. Highway agencies include county, state, interstate, or federal government agencies that operate highways and other thoroughfares. If you wanted to look these up online, you would find the NIPDES regulation published in Title 40 of the Code of Federal Regulation in Part 122 through 124. The portion of the NJPDES rules pertaining to the municipal stormwater regulation programs are found in subchapter 25 at NJAC 7:14A. In February 2004, the rules were amended, establishing the Tier A and Tier B designations for all 157 municipalities in the state of New Jersey that have MS4s. The majority of municipalities were designated under Tier A, which was generally for the more densely populated municipalities, while the rest were designated as Tier B. The most recent permit renewal became effective on January 1st of 2023. As of July of 2022, all Tier B municipalities were reassigned to Tier A and are now regulated under the 2023 Tier A permit. The Public Complex Municipal Stormwater General Permit authorized discharges from small MS4s that are owned or operated by a county, state, interstate, or federal agency at a public complex located entirely or partially in a municipality that is assigned to Tier A under NJAC 7:14A-25.3A1 or in a municipality that receives a waiver under NJAC 7:14A-25.2D. The Highway Agency Municipal Stormwater General Permit authorizes discharges from small MS4s that are owned or operated by a county, state, interstate, or federal agency at a highway or other thoroughfare, including a maintenance or service facility or rest area for such a thoroughfare under NJAC 7:14A-25.283. The federal program requires that the MS4 stormwater program includes the 6 minimum control measures. The New Jersey MS4 permits require the same things except they are called the minimum standards and are found in Part 4B through G in your permit. The 6 minimum control measures cover 1. Public participation, including the requirements for public notice. 2. Local public education and outreach, which can include labeling storm drains, training on building rain barrels, and other measures to increase public awareness on pollution prevention. 3. Construction activities, which are covered more under the Industrial 5G permit. This list is continued on the next slide. For post-construction stormwater management in new development and redevelopment, under this minimum control measure, the permittee is required to develop, update, implement, and enforce a program to address stormwater runoff, including the plans and ordinances required in keeping with the requirements of the stormwater rules, which will be discussed further in more detail. 5. Pollution prevention and good housekeeping. This includes activities at maintenance yards, leaf collection, and so forth, as well as all of the necessary training requirements. 6. MS4 outfall pipe mapping and illicit discharge and scouring detection and control. This includes tracking down and eliminating illicit discharge of pollutants and outfall pipe mapping, which will be discussed later in the training. In addition to ensuring the compliance with all the minimum standards in Part 4B through G of the permit, the MS4 permit requires the permittee adhere to the requirements for additional measures that are identified by the state as required of a permit and optional measures such as BMPs that extend beyond the requirements of the permit and that prevent or reduce pollution to the state waters. For more details on these measures, you can take a look at the permit in Part 4, Section I. Now let's go back to fourth minimum standard from a couple slides ago. The permittee is required to develop, update, implement, and enforce a stormwater management program. The purpose of the stormwater program is to address the negative impacts caused by development, some of which are listed on the slide and will be covered in more detail in the next presentation. Those requirements are also what designer must follow for projects over a certain threshold in size. To be clear, federal regulations require that these impacts be addressed. New Jersey is authorized to issue permits with these same requirements. Therefore, the responsibility to review the projects under its stormwater management program falls directly on the permittee, who must ensure that these impacts are adequately reduced. The required post-construction stormwater management program must include certain elements. So let's take a look at what those requirements are. Each of the elements required as part of the post-construction program are represented by a box on this slide. The top level contains elements that are already in place for existing Tier A municipalities. Under NJAC 7 column 8, which is the stormwater management rules, every municipality is required to have a municipal stormwater management plan. More detail of the elements in that plan are specified in subchapter 4 of 7 column 8. The second box is the required stormwater control ordinance or SCO. Tier A permittees had 1 year from their plan adoption date to adopt an SCO and submit all of this to the county review agency for approval. The Stormwater Management Rule Amendment adopted on March 2, 2020 had a delayed operative date of 1 year so that the municipalities could update their SCOs to match the rule amendments by March 2021. In the case of the most recent 7 column 8 amendments adopted on July 17 of 2023, the municipalities will have 1 year to adopt and make effective an SCO that is in accordance with those same rule amendments. This will be covered in Module 4. An SCO must meet the requirement of the stormwater rules as found in subchapter 4, 5, and 6. The department even created a model SCO for the municipalities to use as a template. Let's take a look at what is in that model. The SCO must include the design and performance standards for stormwater management measures found in subchapter 5 of 7 column 8. These standards will be covered throughout the rest of this training, and they include the requirement to use green infrastructure to meet the design and performance standards, which replace the implementation of the 9 non-structural strategies, how compliance with the groundwater recharge requirement is demonstrated, how stormwater runoff quantity control may be addressed, how water quality is to be addressed, and the rainfall distribution for the New Jersey Water Quality Design Storm, the calculation method to be used to calculate stormwater runoff and groundwater recharge, and detailed maintenance requirements. The last citation in the SCO box is NJAC 5 column 21-7, which is the part of the Residential Site Improvement Standards or RSIS pertaining to stormwater management for residential development. The permit states that RSIS applies to all areas of the Tier A municipalities. Now let's look at the lower tier of the boxes on this slide. The municipality must enforce their own SCO, review application for compliance with their own SCO, ensure long-term operation of BMPs, and must make sure the required maintenance is performed, which for municipalities also include privately owned facilities. The last box also applies to public complexes and highway agencies, and the requirements in these boxes have been previously in place. Now, creating the plan is not a one and done scenario, as the plan must be updated periodically, which will start to cycle over again. At the bottom of the slide, you will see it says audit by NJDEP. In 2016, the MS4 permitting program began performing compliance assistance audits of municipalities to determine how well they are demonstrating compliance with their permit and where they needed help, whether it's with language in the SCO, following the SCO, or other permit requirements. And based on our findings, many municipalities could benefit from this process. If you are not following all of the MS4 permit requirements, it can lead to an enforcement action by NJDEP. Even if a major development project was previously constructed, it still may not fully comply with the SCO if the reviewer did not conduct a proper review, and the municipality can be issued a penalty with a notice of violation for failure to comply with post-construction program. EPA can conduct inspection as well. These also have historically been an in-depth and lengthy process, and that can result in sizable fines and penalties levied against a permittee in accordance with the Clean Water Act. In fact, some of the past penalties range from 4 figures to the millions of dollars, depending on the type of violation. The department would like to prevent this from happening. The training is designed to show reviewer how to review a project so that the permittee stays in compliance with the permit. This means the permittee has the authority to ask applicants for revision in order to enforce and follow its program as well as the permit and the rules. To summarize, we are here for reasons dating back to Clean Water Act. The NIPDAYS program authorized New Jersey to implement a stormwater permitting program for its municipalities, public complexes, and highway agencies. The NIPDAYS rules detail what must be done at the local level to eliminate the discharge of pollutants from MS4 and implement the required post-construction stormwater management program. Under the respective permit, the post-construction minimum standard requires municipalities to develop, implement, update, and enforce its SCO and ensure long-term maintenance is being performed, and part of this also applies to public complexes. Highway agencies are required to follow the stormwater management rules for major development projects. This course is a requirement under the MS4 permit, under which all reviewers need to complete the training once every 5 years. Thank you for your attention during this brief overview. Should you wish to contact the MS4 permitting group, the email address is listed on the slide. Before we wrap up this portion of the presentation, should you have any questions, please use the raise your hands feature if you want to speak, or type your question into the chat box. Okay, up next is Peter. He will discuss the basis of stormwater runoff, the impact of development, and the rule requirements to mitigate these impacts.
Good afternoon. 1 second as I set up my PowerPoint. Okay. My name is Peter Pliantos, and in this presentation, I'll be providing you with a basic understanding of what stormwater is, its interactions with the terrain, and a brief look at the stormwater control measures in place through the Stormwater Management Rule. This presentation is organized into 3 parts. The first part discusses the hydrologic cycle and what impacts land development has on it. Second, we'll introduce some terms relevant to managing stormwater runoff. And the third part will discuss the standards found in the Stormwater Management Rule, NJAC 7:8, to mitigate some of the adverse effects land development has on the hydrologic cycle. We'll begin with land development's impacts on the hydrologic cycle. Just having some difficulties here. There we go. Since stormwater is the focus of this presentation, let's define it up front. Stormwater is water resulting from precipitation, including rain and snow, that runs off the land surface, is transmitted to the subsurface, or is captured by separate storm sewers or other sewage or drainage facilities, or conveyed by snow removal equipment. So now that we've defined stormwater and what produces it, we'll move on to what can control it. That is, the conditions that increase or reduce runoff. Listed here are some basic site conditions that act as a type of control on stormwater. In many cases, the first point of contact for stormwater is vegetation. Dense vegetation scatters precipitation, making it less likely to coalesce and flow. Rough surfaces also inhibit flow. Steep slopes will have an opposite effect and will increase the velocity of flow. Lastly, the surface material itself and even the underlying layers can affect the amount of runoff produced by a site. Pavement will produce a greater volume of runoff than a grassy field, for example. Next, we'll look a little deeper into the effects each one of these site conditions has on rainfall. Beginning with vegetation. When it rains on a tree, the precipitation falls through the leaves and branches, runs along branches and stems or trunks, and then contacts any other shrubs, bushes, and leaf litter lying on the ground. Some of the moisture that penetrates to the soil can then be taken up through the roots of the plants. The leaves of the plants can also absorb moisture. And release of moisture back to the atmosphere then occurs in a process called evapotranspiration. Next, we'll take a look at soils. The properties of the underlying soils can contribute to stormwater runoff. Movement of water into the pores or voids of soil is called infiltration. The rate of infiltration can vary with soil composition, and for soils comprised predominantly of clay can be almost zero, while as for sands, the rate can be 10 inches per hour or more. When the voids become full of water, the soil becomes saturated. Saturated soils cannot absorb any more water, so there is more runoff. Many of the stormwater practices used on developments are designed based on the assumption the soil is fully saturated, so we can best predict the amount of runoff produced and manage it safely. The condition of surface roughness has an effect on the velocity of stormwater as it flows, with higher surface roughness impeding the velocity. The actual topography also has an effect on the movement of stormwater. Steep slopes shed runoff more quickly than those that are more gradual, and uneven terrain provides opportunities for stormwater detention and the slowing down of stormwater runoff, as illustrated in this graphic. Putting what we have covered together, we can then discuss the hydrologic cycle. For an undeveloped site, a large portion of the precipitation, represented by the largest arrow on this graphic, supports vegetation, resulting in evapotranspiration or infiltration, which maintains groundwater flow. Typically, there is little runoff, and it flows over land to a water body. An equivalent volume of precipitation as to that received by the undeveloped site falls onto the same site post-development. Since the site has considerably more impervious ground coverage as compared to before, there is much less infiltration, and therefore depletion of groundwater base flow, as well as slightly less water returning to the atmosphere via evapotranspiration. This site also has a stormwater collection system that discharges to the water body. The insides of stormwater pipes are much smoother than vegetated surfaces, so the higher volume of collected runoff reaches the water body more quickly, potentially causing downstream flooding. Higher rates of runoff can also mean increased erosion and transport of sediment. Development can also cause higher levels of nutrients, like pet waste and fertilizers, pollutants such as vehicle exhaust compounds, pesticides, and industrial chemicals, and heavy metals like copper from brake dust. So in summary, the three primary impacts land development has on stormwater and the hydrologic cycle as a whole are 1, increasing the volume and rate of stormwater runoff through an increase in impervious areas with lower roughness coefficients. 2, degrading the quality of downstream water bodies through increased suspended solid concentrations and increased nutrient loadings. And 3, depleting groundwater and stream base flow, which is also due to increased impervious ground coverage. Now we'll move on to the second part of this presentation, where we will define some terms relevant to the stormwater management rule and introduce some basic related information. We'll begin with defining each of the terms on this slide. First is green infrastructure. The stormwater management rules adopted March 2nd, 2020, included the requirement to use green infrastructure. This is a definition of green infrastructure as noted under section 1.2 of the rules. Part of this definition specifies that green infrastructure manages stormwater close to its source, which plays an important part in the stormwater management rule. Along with the stormwater management measure being located close to the source of runoff it's designed to receive, green infrastructure must treat the stormwater runoff or store it for reuse. The rules define motor vehicles and services on which they are operated as they contribute to pollutants in stormwater runoff. Motor vehicle surface means any pervious or impervious surface that is intended to be used by motor vehicles and/or aircraft and is directly exposed to precipitation, including but not limited to driveways, parking areas, parking garages, roads, racetracks, and runways. And in the next slide, we'll define just exactly what is considered a motor vehicle. Motor vehicle means land vehicles propelled other than by muscular power, such as automobiles, motorcycles, autocycles, and low-speed vehicles. For the purposes of this definition, motor vehicle does not include farm equipment, snowmobiles, all-terrain vehicles, motorized wheelchairs, go-karts, gas buggies, golf carts, ski slope grooming machines, or vehicles that run only on rails or tracks. Building on the definitions from the previous two slides, a regulated motor vehicle surface means any of the following, alone or in combination. 1, a net increase in motor vehicle surface, and/or 2, the total area of motor vehicle surface that is currently receiving water quality treatment either by vegetation or soil, by an existing stormwater management measure, or by treatment at a wastewater treatment plant where the water quality treatment will be modified or removed. Just to note, areas that are only for emergency use and are regularly gated from motor vehicle traffic may be excluded from a site's total regulated motor vehicle surface. A regulated impervious surface means any of the following, alone or in combination. 1, a net increase of impervious surface. 2, the total area of impervious surface collected by a new stormwater conveyance system. 3, the total area of impervious surface proposed to be newly collected by an existing stormwater conveyance system. And/or 4, the total area of impervious surface collected by an existing stormwater conveyance system where the capacity of that conveyance system is increased. Note that for the purpose of this definition, a new stormwater conveyance system is a stormwater conveyance system that is constructed where one did not exist immediately prior to its construction, or an existing system for which a new discharge location is created. This now all comes into play with the next slide, which is the definition of major development. The rules adopted in 2020 incorporated into the definition of major development the time frame within which the cumulative impacts of a development must be considered when determining if the current development will qualify as a major development subject to the requirements of the rules. Additionally, The key terms that affect the classification of major development are disturbance, impervious cover, and motor vehicle surface. The definition reflects that the department considers the cumulative total of a number of items as contributing to what makes a major development. Those items are disturbance and creation of regulated impervious surface since February 2nd, 2004, and creation of regulated motor vehicle surface since March 2nd, 2021. This is done without double counting overlapping regulated motor vehicle and regulated impervious areas. However, for the purpose of a municipal stormwater management plan and stormwater control ordinance, major development is limited to projects that ultimately disturb 1 or more acres of land. The municipality may adopt a more stringent definition of major development to align with the definition in NJAC 7:8 1.2. Just wanted to take a minute to emphasize the situation where a large lot is subdivided into several smaller individual lots, each less than 1 acre, and each sold and built upon separately. As the definition of development in the stormwater management rule states, subdivision in and of itself is a development. If the disturbance, the increase in regulated motor vehicle surface, or the increase in impervious surface of each individual lot summed together meet the threshold of a major development, the subdivision itself is considered a major development, with each individual lot being subject to the requirements of a major development. The municipality or MS4 permittee must review the proposed development for those subdivided lots as a whole. Here are some additional terms relevant to understanding the design and performance standards. Infiltration is the permeation of stormwater into the soil by filtration. Groundwater recharge is precipitation that infiltrates into the soil and is not evapotranspired. Hydrograph, in the context of stormwater runoff analysis, is the graph depicting the flow of runoff versus the time passed at a specific point of analysis. And then design storms, which will be covered further on the next few slides, are theoretical storm events based on precipitation data with an average recurrence interval of 2, 10, and 100 years. So let's talk a little about design storms. Through a frequency analysis of rainfall depths and intensities from past precipitation events, the likelihood of a storm occurrence can be determined using probability analysis. However, a precipitation event being referred to as the X-year storm does not mean that this storm can only happen once every X number of years. Nor does it preclude a larger storm event from also occurring that year. This table lists the probability of a particular storm occurrence and its corresponding chance of happening, expressed as a percentage in a single year. This is what is meant by the 2, 10, and 100-year design storms. The top storm listed in this table is the storm with a 1% chance of occurring in a given year. That's the 100-year storm. At the bottom of the table is the 2-year storm, meaning it has a 50% chance of happening in a given year. Now that we understand the likelihood of a design storm event occurring, keep in mind that one thing we do have is lots of data for these storms. County rainfall data is one source used in the calculations. The link for this data is shown in the header. When reviewing for a municipality, it's best to check the SEO to see if this data is used. However, this is only one of the sources allowed under the rules. The preferred choice for storm data can be found on the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration's, or NOAA's, National Weather Service, or NWS, website. Click on New Jersey on the map to get started. I won't go through all the steps here. Instead, do read Chapter 5 of the New Jersey Best Management Practices Manual, which has the step-by-step directions and additional graphics. The stormwater management rules adopted on July 17, 2023 include some updates to the rainfall data used in stormwater runoff calculations. Studies by the Northeast Regional Climate Center and the DEP show that the 2, 10, and 100-year design storms for most counties have experienced increases in rainfall depth since 1999, when the original NOAA rainfall data was collected. So, current precipitation adjustment factors and future precipitation change factors have been implemented and are applied to the 2, 10, and 100-year design storms in certain circumstances. The current precipitation adjustment factors found in Table 5-5 of the rules adjust the outdated rainfall data from 1999 to reflect what we are experiencing today. For example, the precipitation depth for the 10-year design storm for Hudson County retrieved from the NOAA NWS website should be multiplied by 1.05 to get the current 10-year design storm precipitation depth. The future precipitation change factors found in Table 5-6 of the rules update the rainfall data from 1999 to projected levels for the period between 2050 and 2099. For example, the precipitation depth for the 100-year design storm for Burlington County retrieved from the NOAA NWS website should be multiplied by 1.32 to get the projected 100-year design storm precipitation depth. So keep an eye out for use of the terms current and projected when referring to design storms as we move to the next session of the presentation. Also note that the amendments to the stormwater management rules will be described in depth in the first presentation of Module 4. In the last part of this presentation, we'll take a look at the design and performance standards in place to address the adverse impacts of land development that we discussed previously. These standards are found in the Stormwater Management Rule, Title 7, Chapter 8, or 7:8. As a reminder, here's an overview of those adverse effects of development previously discussed. Under the current rule, there is a requirement to mitigate these adverse impacts using green infrastructure, which acts to reproduce as closely as possible the natural hydrologic cycle, but more on that requirement later. We'll now address how we mitigate these effects in turn, beginning with the runoff quantity control standards in place to address the increase in volume and rate of stormwater runoff. There are 3 runoff quantity control options. The full text of the first can be seen here. Note that the water droplet is the icon used in the BMP manual for this design and performance standard. In order to meet this quantity control option for a given design storm event, the post-construction runoff hydrographs for the current and projected 2, 10, and 100-year storm events must be bounded by and not cross at any point in time the pre-construction runoff hydrographs for these same storm events. An example scenario that meets this standard can be seen here, where the post-construction runoff hydrograph, shown here in gray, is contained entirely within the bounds of the pre-construction runoff hydrograph, shown in teal. And an example scenario that does not meet this standard can be seen here, where a shift in timing results in the post-construction hydrograph exceeding the bounds defined by the pre-construction hydrograph. The second runoff quantity control option, seen here, is unlike the last quantity control option, in that this option is a comparison of the current and projected peak flow rates for the pre- and post-construction hydrographs, and not a comparison over the entire hydrograph duration. However, the analysis required to meet this option is much broader in scope and more detailed than the analysis required to meet the previous option or the next option, as we'll see shortly. The analysis needed here must demonstrate that no flooding will occur at or downstream of the site. This has to assume full development under existing zoning in the drainage area. That extends beyond the site, both upstream and downstream within the HUC 14 area. Because of how detailed the analysis required is, this is the least chosen option to meet the runoff quantity control standard. The third runoff quantity control option, shown here, is similar to option 2 in that it is a comparison of the current and projected peak runoff rates for the pre- and post-construction hydrographs. But unlike option 2, the analysis required is less detailed because post-construction peak runoff rates for the 2 10 and 100-year storm events are limited to 50, 75, and 80% respectively of the pre-construction peak runoff rates. This rate reduction is sufficient to demonstrate runoff quantity control, and the offsite analysis as required in option 2 isn't needed. This is the option we see chosen most of the time. There is an exemption from the quantity control standard. If stormwater runoff from a project discharges within a tidal flood hazard area, and it's clear the increased volume of stormwater runoff will not lead to downstream flooding, then the site will be exempt from the runoff quantity control requirement. But it must be demonstrated that no downstream flooding would occur. Now we'll move on to the water quality standards in place. When a development proposes 1/4 acre or more of regulated motor vehicle surface, stormwater management measures for water quality control are required. Why is that? Developed sites typically do not have the surface roughness to slow down runoff. This means there generally is not enough time for any pollutants to settle out, resulting in direct discharge to water bodies. The Stormwater Rule includes design and performance standards for water quality best management practices, or BMPs, and the rule focuses on 2 pollutants, total suspended solids, or TSS, and nutrients. TSS includes sediment and other pollutants that can be removed from stormwater through filtration. This is important because high TSS levels impair water bodies. Nutrients are generally a result of fertilizers and animal waste. The 2 nutrients of concern are phosphorus and nitrogen because they overstimulate plant growth in aquatic environments, which results in algal blooms and a reduction in dissolved oxygen concentration in water. The current rule requires a developed site's stormwater runoff be treated to 80% TSS reduction and the removal of nutrients to the maximum extent feasible. Also, just to note that the trigger for water quality control in 7:8 is 1/4 acre regulated motor vehicle surface. But local SEOs might have a stricter measure, as was mentioned in the last presentation. So definitely check the local SEO. Excuse me. In order to meet the 80% TSS removal requirement, stormwater runoff from the water quality design storm must be treated through the use of BMPs. The water quality design storm is a storm event with a custom rainfall intensity distribution that results in a total rainfall depth of 1.25 inches in 2 hours. The custom distribution can be found in the Stormwater Management Rule 7:8. The gold % sign is the icon used in the BMP manual for this design and performance standard. Some BMPs remove more TSS than others, so that each type may have its own value or even a range of TSS removal. The percentage identified in the manual is only awarded to BMPs designed and constructed in accordance with the information in the manual. Also, if a BMP is not properly maintained, its ability to provide water quality treatment may be impaired. There is also an exemption from the quality control standard. The requirement to reduce TSS does not apply to any stormwater runoff in a discharge regulated under a numeric effluent limitation for TSS imposed under the NJIPD's rules. If there is a separate NJIPD's permit, it has to cover the same area and the same runoff flow that would have been subject to the runoff quality standard. Now we'll move on to the third set of standards in place, which address the reduction in groundwater due to development. Earlier, we defined groundwater recharge as that portion of runoff that travels down past the root zone of plants. The stormwater rule provides two options for development. The full text of option 1 is posted here. To meet this option, a development must match the existing annual volume infiltrated on the pre-developed site. This option requires careful analysis, and unfortunately, we still see a lot of mistakes in the analyses performed or in the local review of calculations. The second option requires the designer calculate the increased runoff volume that will be produced by the development from the projected 2-year storm and infiltrate that amount. This generally requires a lot of stormwater to be infiltrated, and this may not be easy to do if a project is going from a lot of vegetation to a lot of impervious cover, particularly if the soil was very well drained to start. Additionally, the brown shield is the icon used in the BMP manual for this design and performance standard. There is an exemption from the groundwater recharge requirement that is applicable to only previously developed portions within an urban redevelopment area. Previously developed is defined as areas devoid of woody vegetation. And for an area where woody vegetation has newly taken root, it's no longer considered developed. Just to note, we see a lot of compliance issues regarding the groundwater recharge standards, mainly due to improper soil testing. But that will be elaborated upon in a later presentation. The rules require that green infrastructure, or GI, BMPs, be used to address the requirements for groundwater recharge, stormwater runoff quantity control, and stormwater runoff quality. Subsection 5.2 of the rules includes 3 tables listing BMPs and how they may be used to meet the design and performance standards. Since GI must be located close to the source of runoff, small-scale GI BMPs require limitations on the contributory drainage area. As noted in the last bullet on this slide, municipalities may approve alternative designs, but they must match the GI definition and follow other applicable limitations. Each of the tables identify columns indicating whether a BMP may be used to address stormwater runoff quality, quantity control, or groundwater recharge. The last column is the separation required from the seasonal high water table, assuming the soil testing procedures in Chapter 12 of the BMP manual have been followed correctly. Note that Chapter 12 was formerly Appendix E in the BMP manual. Table 5-1 lists GI BMPs that may be used to meet the groundwater recharge, stormwater runoff quantity control, and stormwater runoff water quality design and performance standards, provided that the GI BMP is designed in accordance with the BMP manual. Some of the GI BMPs cannot receive runoff from motor vehicle services and therefore do not address water quality, like cisterns and green roofs. Others do not attenuate the discharge of stormwater runoff from the 2, 10, and 100-year design storms, so they cannot meet the quantity control requirement, like dry wells. There are certain MTDs with a vegetative or soil component that meet the GI definition, but not all MTDs are GI. A listing of MTDs that meet the definition of GI are NJCAP verified and certified by the department can be found on our website. Lastly, these systems are typically smaller in scale, and dry wells, GI MTDs, pervious paving systems, small-scale bioretention systems, small-scale sand filters, and small-scale infiltration basins all have a limited contributory drainage area that they can treat, as defined in NJAC 7:8 5.3b. BMPs in Table 5-2 can be used to address stormwater runoff quantity control. These can have drainage areas that are larger than the drainage areas of BMPs listed in Table 5-1. These BMPs may be used to meet water quality and recharge only if a waiver or variance is granted from NJAC 7:8 5.3. BMPs in Table 5-3 always require a waiver or variance from NJAC 7:8 5.3 before they can be used to meet any of the design and performance standards. It is not anticipated that these BMPs will be used much in the future because of what is required in order to grant a waiver or approve a variance. As for some of the BMPs noted on this table, blue roofs don't have a reuse component, and extended detention basins are typically large and also require additional treatment to meet water quality standards. The majority of manufactured treatment devices, or MTDs, currently do not have a soil or vegetative component, so they fall into this table. And then subsurface gravel wetlands and wet ponds not designed with beneficial reuse are listed on this table as well. The regulations under subsection 5.2F specify that BMPs designed in accordance with the BMP manual are presumed capable of providing treatment necessary to meet the design and performance standards under the rules. However, anything that is not designed in accordance with the BMP manual is considered an alternative design. As with all major development projects, these alternative designs must be reviewed by the review agency, and in these cases, the DEP must be notified of the review agency's approval of the alternative design. BMP manual is always updated to align with the current rule. Shown here is a snip from our BMP manual webpage listing out the chapters for specific BMPs. The BMPs listed under these chapters correspond to the BMPs listed in the tables under subsection 5.2 of the rule, with BMPs from chapters 9, 10, and 11 corresponding with BMPs from tables 5-1, 5-2, and 5-3 respectively. Next, we'll take a look at an example cover page from a BMP chapter. As we said, Chapter 9 contains all of the GI BMPs listed in Table 5-1. Shown here is the cover page from Chapter 9.8, which is for small-scale infiltration basins, and it's a typical example of the chapters for the various BMPs listed in subsection 5.3 of the rules. At the top of the page is an introductory statement that provides an overview of how the BMP addresses pollutant removal and the rate at which it removes total suspended solids, or TSS, from stormwater runoff. The first table on the page is also an overview, and it identifies the design and performance standards of the rules for which the BMP can or cannot be used. This is where you see the icons we discussed earlier for each of the design and performance standards. If you are not familiar with the BMP, this is a good place to become acquainted with how the BMP complies with the rule requirements. In this case, the small-scale infiltration basin, when designed in accordance with all of the design criteria in the chapter, is approved as a GIBMP. It can be used to address stormwater runoff quantity control when designed as an online system. It can be used to meet the groundwater recharge requirement. And it has a TSS removal rate of 80%. The other tables below this first table, although not shown here, provide additional design criteria explained in the chapter. To reiterate, BMPs are awarded the TSS removal rate stated in the BMP manual only if they are designed in accordance with the BMP manual. That includes meeting the requirements for pre- and post-construction soil testing and a full maintenance plan, which Manesh will address next. A later presentation in Module 3 titled How to Review a Project will elaborate on how to determine if a BMP meets the design and performance standards. Module 4 will also include further discussion on and examples of evaluating GIBMPs. In summary, the first part of this presentation covered some of the adverse effects land development has on the hydrologic cycle, including increasing the rate and volume of stormwater runoff, degrading the quality of downstream water bodies, and depleting groundwater. In the final part of this presentation, we briefly covered the design and performance standards in place to mitigate some of the adverse effects of land development. Standards such as 1, the 3 water quantity control options, 2, the water quality requirement to remove 80% of the total suspended solids and nutrients to the maximum extent feasible, 3, the 2 groundwater recharge options, and 4, the requirement to meet those 3 standards using green infrastructure. Thank you all for your attention. Should you wish to contact me, here is my information. And I'll stop here for a second to see if there are any questions. I'll check with our moderator.
Yes, there is one question regarding the granting of waiver and variance from the GI standards. And the question is that if a project requires both municipal approval and also approval from DEP for land use permit, which entity shall review and grant the waiver? From the rule, the DEP does not grant waiver or variance. So if you need to get a variance, which means a variance from the stormwater control ordinance, you have to go to your municipality. But for the land use permit, there's no mechanism now to grant variance or waiver from the GI standard. The other question regarding the recharge. The question is, would a site with a soil having zero permeability relieve the applicant from providing recharge? I think we have to define what means zero permeability. And if a site that has a soil that like these soils that does not have any recharge, I think when you use the New Jersey Department DEP's groundwater recharge spreadsheet, calculate the annual recharge, it will show that there's no recharge in the pre-construction development, so it will not have a very minimum recharge deficit. So if the site really does not infiltrate because of the soil, then you probably won't get any deficiency that you need to recharge. The other question is that, what if the town has not updated their SCO yet, though? If the town has not updated their SCO, then you will follow their SCOs, whatever right now in effective. Okay, the other question is that if the property, if the project property has less than 1 acre, but the municipality require improvement outside the property like a sidewalk, etc., that puts the area of disturbance above 1 acre, would the project be now considered as a major development? The definition of major development is that project disturb 1 acre or more of disturbance. So it doesn't really limit to that line. It's just like the project. So I will say that if the project, including the disturbance within the property line and also outside the property line together over 1 acre, it will be considered as a major development. If the township and Matt has the question continue from the waiver, the question is, what if the township has not updated their SCO yet to reflect the new DPGI requirement? How would they then grant any waivers from such? If the township, they have not updated their SCO to the rule update adopted to 2020, then they don't have the township SCO does not have the GI requirement. So if you need approval from the township under the township's SCO, there's no GI requirement. However, if also you need a DP permit and then you come to the DP, then it does require you have the GI requirement under the current rule, then you are subject to the GI. So it sounds like you would have two sets of standards you have to follow, but our recommendation is that you have to design the size GO to get have the GI BMPs to meet the GI standard for getting the land use permit, because the GI BMP will also meet those BMP under the previous rules. So if your site design with GI requirements standards, then you will definitely meet the previous rule and also the SCO adopted pursuant to the previous rule. But again, DP does not have a GI waiver or variance for the GI requirement. Okay, so I don't see any further question. So we can take 10 minutes break. And if you still have questions, I can answer in the chat. So right now it's 2:16. So we will come back at 2:26. Thank you.
All right, hello everyone. So far we have covered the history of stormwater regulations and the basics of the MS4 permit. You may recall from earlier the slide with the 5 post-construction stormwater management program requirements. One of them was to ensure the long-term operation and maintenance of BMPs. So let's take a look at that a little bit more. First, we'll look at why maintenance is so important. Second, we'll take a look at the historical background for the responsibility of ensuring maintenance. And then we'll get into the responsibilities of the Tier A municipality, a public complex, or a highway agency. And finally, we'll go over what should be in the maintenance plan and how you should be reviewing it. So BMPs, they are pollutant removal mechanisms, as you know, and if they stop working according to design, or if they even fail, there can be serious consequences that can impact the environment. Since BMPs are designed to remove trash, debris, sediment, they can often get clogged if maintenance is not performed. That means the drain time of, say, a parking lot, for example, or whatever else is upstream may be even longer, which can cause flooding. It can also mean a basin takes longer to drain, which can lead to a possible, let's say, creation of a mosquito breeding ground. Plus, they can attract unwanted wildlife or can even lead to complaints from the public. All of this is stuff we really want to avoid. So here are a couple examples of poorly maintained BMPs. The top image here, it has trash, vegetation collecting in it. So when another storm occurs, particulates will be transported downstream. If you take a look at the bottom picture, the lawn depression, it's not really draining properly. This inundation could result in bare soil areas and wind erosion when it dries. If it doesn't drain, then algae could become established, and this could prevent, let's say, an infiltration basin from draining. Here are a couple examples of properly maintained BMPs. The top picture is of a rain garden, and the bottom picture is a green roof. Both are well maintained and clear of any debris and trash. There's no visible signs of improper drainage that would compromise the BMP's functionality. So these are just some nice examples of maintenance here. So here's a question for all of you to think about. Based on what you see here alone from the same site, does this look like a ponded infiltration basin or a constructed wetland? Well, if you visited this site without knowing what was designed, you might think everything is okay. However, we have seen the plans for this, and this was actually approved as an infiltration basin. Now, based on the presence of the wetland vegetation and the standing water, the right type of maintenance was obviously not performed, and it became what you see now. At this point, the basin would need repairs or maybe even retrofitting. When BMPs are improperly maintained or neglected, the consequences can include water quality impairment, potential flooding issues, failing embankments, or the potential for safety concerns, erosion, health issues that could occur from, for example, mosquitoes, like I said earlier, or even financial impacts such as decreased property value. They can become a headache for a permittee, which is why proper maintenance needs to be performed. So now let's take a look at the historical background for performing maintenance. The responsibility to perform maintenance is not a new requirement, as you can see from the 1990 Stormwater Control Ordinance model. The ordinance is designed to comply with the maintenance requirements in the stormwater management rules. An intent of this was to establish responsibility for continued maintenance, repair, and safety of stormwater management facilities before they're even constructed. The model ordinance issued in 1990 has required the responsible party to be the property owner of the project, a governmental entity, or other legally established entity such as a homeowner association. It does not impose the responsibility on a homeowner of a single lot unless the homeowner owns all of the lots in that development. So the responsible party should not be a single homeowner. The model stormwater control ordinance stated that an individual owner of a single lot in a development cannot be responsible for the maintenance of the stormwater management system of an entire development. The responsible party must be a homeowners association or a similar permanent entity. We'll look at a lot of the examples of this a little bit later on in this presentation, however, so just keep that in mind for now. Well, then what are the permit requirements regarding maintenance of stormwater BMPs? As was previously mentioned, the Tier A, public complex, and highway agency permits, they require that the permittee ensure that adequate cleaning, long-term operation, and maintenance of BMPs take place. Under the municipal post-construction stormwater management program, you can start with an inspection program that includes notification of the responsible parties. A municipality can opt to enact penalty provisions into its ordinances as a step towards enforcing compliance. Or they can even create a licensing program to offset inspection costs. The permit requirements for ensuring long-term cleaning, operation, and maintenance provided are divided into two classes based on ownership or operational status for the Tier A, public complex, and highway agency permits. The first group is facilities owned and operated by a municipality. It can be, let's say, for example, a town hall or some sort of library complex. The four elements required for this group are shown here, and they may be found in Part 4, Section C1 of the Tier A permit, Section C3 for the public complex permit, and Section C2 for the highway agency permit. Inspection and maintenance must follow the plans or be performed more frequently than stated on the plans. A logbook needs to be maintained to show compliance with this section. If you're looking for more specifics, there are more details of this in the permit, which you can read further about. Continuing on, the permittee also must certify annually that these facilities are properly functioning. And lastly, improper functioning facilities where repairs were not made must be documented and prioritized, so a schedule must be maintained. The permit citations are in parentheses for the Tier A, public complex, and the highway agency permits, respectively. The second group consists of those facilities not owned or operated by the municipality. Examples of this can include a retail complex or even a housing development. The permit requirements are found in Part 4, Section C for facilities not owned or operated by the permittee. This is not a new requirement, and the way it is now written is to clarify what has been required previously. The permittee is required to ensure maintenance is performed according to the plan, or even more frequently than the plan states. A logbook must be maintained of the actions taken to enforce compliance, and these details are required. Again, for more information on the subject, please refer to your respective permit. Compliance with the permit requirement to ensure long-term cleaning, operation, and maintenance starts with the reviewer assessing the plans. Otherwise, the BMP may not even function as intended, or its performance may decline. Approving a weak maintenance plan creates potential problems for the permittee to enforce the performance of maintenance, and it may lead to the possibility of a permit violation. The review is a key element to ensuring long-term operation and maintenance. For reference, the SEO includes the detailed requirements for a maintenance plan, and these are also found in the stormwater management rules in 7:8. The NJDEP BMP manual includes further details if you want further reference. If you are using the review checklist from the Tier A guidance document, the maintenance portion starts at the bottom of page 17. These are just crop snapshots from the 2 pages just to get the information into a single page. Section C here applies to Tier A, public and highway permits. Before the end of the presentation, I'll also show you some of the other documents available online that can assist you in the review of a maintenance plan for a project. There's also more information in Chapter 4.1 of the Tier A guidance for stormwater facilities maintenance. This is part of the table from that chapter that lists the implementation schedule for these minimum standards for a Tier A MS4. Another part listing more of the minimum standards. I'm not going to read these to you, but they're certainly there to assist reviewers. And the final part with more minimum standards. The permit language is very similar for public complexes and highway agencies. We just have not yet prepared a guidance document for them here. So if you want to put things in perspective, an inadequate review can really wreck things. The duties of these 3 parties that you see here on this slide, they really have to mesh together. So not requiring the details of the maintenance plan, it can push the burden onto the stormwater coordinator or the DPW facilities maintenance office, or it can even create an issue for DEP enforcement. Here's an example of a judgment issued against a municipality and the responsible party for not enforcing the stormwater management plan that was approved by the municipality. A lot of complaints were made because maintenance on an infiltration basin were not being properly performed, and this led to the basin clogging, odors, and flooding of a neighbor, which is something that we really want to avoid happening. Since we would like to avoid such legal issues, let's talk about what should be in a maintenance plan so that we know what to look for when we review one. So I'm going to start with general information, show some examples of what a maintenance plan should not look like, and then get into more specifics. So the rules specify the maintenance plan must include details for the design shown on the construction plans, a list of tasks and the schedule for performing them, plus the cost estimates, those are required. The name and contact information for the responsible party must be clearly shown. This person or even party must perform both types of maintenance. So let's review what falls under preventative versus corrective maintenance. So the first type of maintenance is preventative, which is the regular tasks that keep a BMP functioning as it was intended to be. So this can involve quarterly inspections, grass cutting wherever it's appropriate, trash clearing, replacing vegetation that's failing to thrive, or it can even be snow removal. And then corrective actions are those that may be needed should failures start to occur, such as a periodic replacement of the sand bed and a sand filter, or it could even be in response to a major event, such as maybe a major rainstorm or a drought, car accident, a high window event, just to name a few. The plan must require that a logbook of all maintenance activities be kept so that the inspection can confirm this is being done. The inspection records must be reviewed annually. They might even give clues that something is starting to fail or not work properly. The review should confirm that an annual evaluation of the plan is specified, and then during the inspection, the permittee should confirm that this is taking place. Chapter 8 of the BMP manual focuses on maintenance, in particular page 2. On page 3 are other items for consideration and the procedures that must be followed. Retrofitting information that can be found on the next page of chapter 8 as well. So take a further look into that over there. Chapters 9, 10, and 11, they include specific maintenance details for each type of BMP. So for example, there are specific maintenance tasks associated with a small scale bioretention system. You would have biweekly inspections, perimeter grass mowing. Those are just to name a few. Another example is if you're doing GI with plantings, you would need to make sure that they are being watered, especially in the first year when maintenance will be a little higher. So just some things to think about right there. I mentioned procedures to be followed. One such procedure is the requirement to record on the deed information about the maintenance plan, and that identifies the responsible party. And this would include the name, address, and a phone number. The maintenance plan must be recorded with the parcel where the stormwater management measure is located. Any change in the responsible party information due, let's say, for example, to a change in property ownership, must also be recorded on the deed. The information must also be updated after project construction is completed. Now let's look at some bad examples. If the stormwater management plan consists of a single sheet or is part of a plan sheet, that should be a red flag right away. Remember, the rules require schedules of the various types of maintenance tasks, an equipment list, cost information, along with a logbook to record the actions that were performed. There's no way a complete record can be made on a plan sheet, nor would maintenance staff actually record observations and completed tasks here. So this would be an example of a very weak plan, and therefore the reviewer has the authority to request revisions so that the permittee can comply with the requirements of the permit. Now, imagine you are reviewing a 55-page maintenance plan for a constructive wetland, and you open the table of contents and you see this. Now, you may think, well, they have a 55-page plan, they have preventative procedures, but if you look closely at the headings, you see A for grass cutting, F mechanical components, and H stormwater detention facility. This will indicate to you that the maintenance plan may not reflect the actual design and require some revisions. What this illustrates is that the reviewer has a responsibility to check the details provided in the plan so that the permittee meets the permit requirement to ensure long-term operation and maintenance. In this case, this is an actual approved maintenance plan that had absolutely nothing to do with the constructed wetland shown on the approved plan. So think of it this way. A good maintenance plan is going to contain three essential pieces: information, planning, and education. From the maintenance plan, the reviewer and maintenance staff must be able to know what to look for, where the BMPs are, and how to get there, when and how to perform the maintenance tasks, and what training is needed to successfully follow this plan. Under the information section, a complete inventory of the various BMPs should be provided, including the type, the location, and if there are any outfalls. It should be easy to find the water surface elevation for normal conditions, as well as the design storms in relationship to visible elements in the BMP, if it stores or attenuates the discharge of stormwater. In this case, the drain downtime should also be included. If there is an infiltration component, what is the benchmark permeability rate so that maintenance staff can check whether the system is failing? And if there is a manufactured treatment device, the warranty, the owner's manual, those should also be included. The second essential element is planning, which paints a complete picture of what should be done by maintenance personnel. We would not want someone to say, for example, mow a bioretention system with a meadow, thinking it was an overgrown detention basin. Planning includes the schedule of tasks, the tools needed for each task, access information, where sediment or trash is to be taken, and if it requires dewatering, where that is going to occur. If there is an internal component and it is destroyed by a large storm, for example, maintenance staff should be able to correctly repair or replace it. I mentioned collected sediment. Planning includes how to transport it and what information such as a receipt must be retained. Planning includes the individual costs plus the annual cost for each task. So make sure this information is part of the maintenance plan when you do review it. The third element is education. Maintenance staff must be trained on safety measures, inspection methods, the various tasks, and the use of appropriate tools and equipment. Maintenance must also know what to record and where to file the records. Education includes knowing what records to keep. So you need to always keep a backup of the records in another location, so you never know if the original records could be destroyed somehow. The permit even requires all approved maintenance plans be kept on file for review by the DEP. Now that the reviewer has checked the maintenance plan for accuracy, it's important to know whom this responsible party should be so that they can be contacted when an issue arises. For a public complex or highway agency, the permittee is the party. Under the Tier A permit, it can be different people or one or more organizations. Obviously, it should be the developer during construction or a public entity where appropriate. Transfer of the responsibility can be to an HOA and a residential development, an owner or a tenant in a non-residential development, another public agency, and only to a single homeowner or tenant in the event that the individual is the sole owner of the entire residential development. If you take a look at NJAC 7:8-5.8C, it actually expressly forbids this. No homeowner can be held responsible for maintaining a basin in a residential development unless they own the entire development. So let's take a look at some examples of how this can be applied. So here we prepared some scenarios of who the responsible party should or shouldn't be that you may see when you review a project. So here's example one. A 5-lot subdivision has one BMP that is collecting stormwater runoff from all 5 lots. This BMP is on one of these 5 lots. Can that lot owner be the responsible party for the maintenance of the BMP? And while you think about that, I'll read example 2. A 5-lot subdivision has 5 BMPs, 1 BMP per lot. They only collect and treat runoff generated from their respective lot. Can the homeowners of each of these lots be the responsible party for each BMP that is in their own lot? So take 2-3 seconds, think about that really quick. And the answers to both of them is actually no. An individual homeowner cannot be the responsible party for the BMP located in their own lot or one separate lot unless the individual homeowner owns all of these lots. And a third example, a development of one lot that doesn't propose any subdivision and is a major development has one singular homeowner. Can this homeowner be responsible for maintenance of a BMP that is proposed for this development? So think about that for a couple seconds here. And the answer to this is actually yes. An individual homeowner can be the responsible party for the BMP that is located in their own lot if they're the sole owner of the entire development. So the difference between this example and example 1 and 2 is that in this one, the homeowner is the sole owner of the entire development. That's the big key about this subject. Must own the entire development to be the responsible party. So, all right, moving on. As we've learned earlier, a good maintenance plan is going to include a lot of information. For this reason, my colleague created various templates for use by a designer. These templates, they can be customized. They're also created in such a way that they can be used as a teaching tool for reviewers and maintenance inspectors alike. Currently, they're being updated to reflect the new green infrastructure rules, so stay tuned for the updated versions of these templates as they are going to be very useful when you do conduct your reviews. Here is a representative sample of the various templates that could be used in a project. Anyone can go to the department's website, and there you can click on maintenance guidance. At the top of the page is a brief introductory video followed by a template of a maintenance plan. And below that is the field manual section. Here's an example of the field manual for a surface infiltration basin. Each BMP should have its own field manual because each of them has different functions and components that need to be inspected and maintained. The field manual templates include the components as shown on the left here, BMP overview, basic design information, visual aid for stormwater basin inspection, reference documents, inspection checklist / maintenance actions, and preventative maintenance records and corrective maintenance records. The designer, they can modify the contents of the field manual template with the design information of the BMPs that are incorporated in the development. The reviewer makes sure the information is correct, and the responsible party follows the field manual to perform maintenance. The municipality, depending on the ownership status, then follows the permit requirements to ensure maintenance is being performed. The reviewer should also make sure the inspection checklist has been customized to match design features on the construction plan and in the stormwater report. This is a partial screen capture of the infiltration basin inspection checklist log. This can be found online in the maintenance guidance section of the Tier A guidance document. Again, these are currently being updated, so stay tuned for the newer versions of them. Another partial screen capture, and this is of the infiltration basin preventative maintenance. Logbooks are also available on the webpage for recording both preventative and corrective maintenance tasks that are performed by field personnel under the heading of maintenance logs and inspection records. These are what the maintenance staff may look at during periodic checkups of the maintenance records. For our municipal reviewers, if a private party applicant is missing logbooks, show them where to find the templates and have them use them to make sure that it's easier on the municipal inspectors. So this can all be found at the link at the top. Here's a screenshot of the maintenance webpage. Definitely check it out if you haven't seen it. It's very useful, highly recommended by all of us, and it spells things out very, very well and clearly with detail on what you need to do if you're having trouble and need help, or even if you have questions on what to do, you should be able to find your answers here. There are even links to further training as well as videos that you can take a look at as well. So to sum things up, without proper long-term maintenance, the BMPs may not continue to function as designed, resulting in impacts to the environment. The permittee is required to ensure long-term operation and that maintenance is being performed. A municipality may institute measures to facilitate these efforts. The first step towards meeting this permit requirement is a thorough review of the maintenance plan submitted with a development or redevelopment application. We also reviewed the 3 key elements of the maintenance plan, which are information, planning, and education. And you've also seen where the guidance and field manual templates may be found on our website. So again, please use those as a reference if you need help and or need answers to anything during your reviews. So thanks again for your attention. Here's how you can contact me. Before I turn it over to Lisa, I want to remind you that you can type out questions through the chat function and staff will get to them, or you can always email your questions to me if that is a little more comfortable for you, short or detailed, it doesn't matter. And we can give you a more formal answer there. So I'll ask Changi, do we have any questions?
I think I answered most of questions. Just one, that the question is example one, language is incorrect for the answer. The lot owner could be the HOA. The answer assumes that the lot owner is the homeowner. So our answer is that the home, yeah, we will take a look at the wordings we use in the presentation. And thank you for seeing this one. Yeah, we will take a bit. Thank you. So there's no further question. We can move on. Mapping requirement.
Okay, thank you. Can everyone hear me? All right. So hi, my name's Lisa Schaefer. I'm an engineer in the Municipal Stormwater Engineering Unit. I'm going to be filling in today for Gabriella Polsinelli, who's the environmental specialist in the Municipal Stormwater Permitting Unit. So I'll do my best to cover the material, and I will be covering stormwater infrastructure mapping requirements that are in the MS4 permit and what kind of tools the department has created to help you in meeting the mapping requirements. So as you may recall from earlier today, Suna shared that the Bureau of Najipti's Stormwater Permitting and Water Quality Management issues 3 separate stormwater general permits to public entities across the state. And those permits are the Tier A municipal permit, the public complex permit, and the highway agency permit. Now, shown on this slide in the parentheses are the permit renewal dates. Some were earlier this year and some are previous to that or upcoming. Okay, but each of these permits has its own set of mapping requirements, so I will do my best to discuss those in more detail. So the previous Tier A permit iteration from 2018 required municipalities to develop and maintain an outfall pipe map. And those outfall pipe maps were initially due to the department on January 1st of 2019 in any format. The TRA municipalities were also required to submit an electronic form of their outfall pipe map to the department by December 21 of the year 2020. Those acceptable electronic formats included submitting an Esri geodatabase, Esri shapefile, AutoCAD file, DEP Excel template, or using the DEP ArcGIS online mapping tool. Now, as of last check, the MS4 unit reported having 85 to 90% of the outfall pipe maps submitted, and it was working with the municipalities to get the rest in. So additionally, the 2018 permit required TRA municipalities to maintain an inventory of all stormwater facilities that they own or operate. The inventory must include location information as well as information about the individual facility. Now, while this is not required to be submitted to the department, it is reviewed during routine compliance inspections and audits. TRA municipalities shall also ensure responsible parties of stormwater facilities not owned or operated by the TRA municipality perform the required maintenance. The permit condition requires municipalities to maintain a log sufficient to demonstrate compliance with the maintenance requirements of privately owned or operated stormwater facilities. And the log is required to show actions taken by the municipality to enforce maintenance. So, for example, a notice from the township to the responsible parties requiring maintenance of their stormwater basins, and also location information of the facility that was the subject of the action. Without the location information, there is no demonstration that the municipality actually enforced the maintenance requirements on those privately owned facilities. We feel that if you don't know where the facilities are, you cannot make sure that they're properly maintained, and enforcement actions are taken against those responsible parties for failing to maintain their basins. So building off of the required inventory logs, the 2023 Tier A permit now requires municipalities to complete an MS4 infrastructure map. Mapping is an entirely new requirement for new Tier A towns, but original Tier A towns do not get an extension on the requirement to have submitted an electronic outfall pipe map to the department by December 21st of the year 2020, as was outlined in the 2018 permit. The applicable electronic formats include submitting an Esri geodatabase, an Esri shapefile, an AutoCAD file, a DEP Excel template, or using the DEP ArcGIS online mapping tool. MS4 infrastructure includes MS4 outfalls, MS4 groundwater discharge points, MS4 interconnections, storm drain inlets, MS4 manholes, MS4 conveyances, MS4 pump stations, stormwater facilities, and property boundaries of maintenance yards and other ancillary operations. The map needs to be reviewed annually to account for any new or newly identified MS4 infrastructure, and it is to be posted on the permittee's dedicated stormwater webpage. The public complex permit the public complex permit covers facilities such as universities, prisons, military bases, hospitals, and other large publicly owned facilities. Their mapping requirements are similar to that of the 2018 Tier A permit. They were required to develop an outfall pipe map that was initially due to the department on January 1st of the year 2020 in any format, and then they were required to submit an outfall pipe map in an electronic format by December 21st of the year 2020. So maps for public complexes are required to have the following. For MS4 outfalls, we need the receiving surface water name and the type of outfall. For MS4 groundwater discharge points, the type. For MS4 interconnections, the type that it's into or from and the entity. And for storm drain inlets, the information needed is the type if a catch basin is present, a label whether or not it's present, and if it's been retrofitted. Also needed are MS4 manholes, and for MS4 conveyances, the type and direction of flow are required. We also need MS4 pump stations, and for various stormwater facilities, the type, what it is. Property boundaries are needed for the public complex, and of course, property boundaries of maintenance yards and other ancillary operations where the type of that operation is to be specified. The Highway Agency permit covers the highway and bridge commissions across the state. So that includes NJDOT, the Garden State Parkway, and highway agencies in each county. So similar to the Tier A and public complex permit, highway agencies were required to submit an outfall pipe map to the department in an electronic format by December 21st of the year 2020. Highway agencies also have the same stormwater facility map and inventory requirements as public complexes. They must develop and maintain a map and then inventory the listed stormwater facilities. The difference here is that highway agencies had until January 1st of 2023 to submit their stormwater facility inventory and map to the department in an electronic format. To this point, the MS4 unit reports having had a decent submission rate and continues to work with the permittees to help them get their outfall pipe maps and stormwater facility inventories and maps submitted. Now, the mapping requirements weren't just added to the MS4 permits because we like looking at dots on a map. Mapping and inventorying of stormwater facilities is crucial to conducting the required inspections and maintenance in each permit. Inspections for stream scouring at outfall pipes is one of those required inspections. And here are two examples of bad scouring at outfall pipes. I'll come back to these images in just a moment, but first let's talk about what we mean by scouring. So stream scouring is the erosion or removal of stream bed or bank material by the physical action of flowing water and the sediment it carries. Scouring can lead to the damage of physical structures, and that can require expensive maintenance or replacement. So here, all right, we have the two examples. Now, all of the roots that you see sticking out here and here, they're signs of scour. Plus, you also want to look at how far down, okay, vertically the channel has cut. The sediment that was removed had to go somewhere, and of course, it went downstream, and that could create further erosion and so forth. Okay. All right. So here's a summary of the stream scouring requirements from each of the MS4 permits. The mapping of outfalls greatly assists in meeting those requirements. Tier A's have to inspect each outfall for stream scouring once every 5 years. Public complexes and highway agencies have to inspect each of their outfalls once annually for stream scouring. Okay, illicit discharge inspections are also greatly assisted by mapping and inventorying stormwater features. So here's an example of an illicit discharge occurring at a municipal outfall, by which I believe it's the cloudiness itself or sheen, depending on what you see, that's the indicator. All right, so tracing back to upstream inlets showed that runoff from fertilized lawns with sprinkler systems was what was causing a dry weather flow that was high in nutrients. This issue could be resolved easily due to the availability of outfall and inlet locations in the municipality's inventory and map. So illicit discharges are any non-stormwater discharge through a stormwater outfall. The easiest way to find an illicit discharge is to inspect an outfall 3 days after the last rain event and look for a flow. Now, while this flow could be groundwater infiltrating into the system, in many cases it is evidence of an illicit discharge and is most likely contaminating the waterway to which the outfall discharges. So here are the illicit discharge requirements for each MS4 permit. It's important to note that any illicit discharges found must be remediated and reported to the department. Tier A's and highway agencies have to inspect each outfall for illicit discharges once every 5 years, and public complexes have to inspect each of their outfalls once annually for illicit discharges. Stormwater facilities maintenance is probably the most important reason for a permittee to inventory and map its stormwater facilities. Most of the calls we receive are complaints relating to failing stormwater facilities. We regularly receive calls reporting ponding water, odor, mosquitoes, and flooding. So many times the permittee is unaware that the basin even existed or that cleaning and maintenance was their responsibility. Keeping an up-to-date facilities map and inventory alleviates this problem and helps permittees schedule and conduct regular cleaning and maintenance. So here's an example of a basin where ownership was unknown and, as can be expected, cleaning and maintenance was neglected. Okay, the lack of cleaning and maintenance turned the basin into a pond complete with aquatic vegetation and wildlife. Okay, so all MS4 permittees are required to develop, update, and implement a program to ensure the adequate long-term cleaning, operation, and maintenance of all permittee-owned or operated stormwater facilities. Municipalities are also required to ensure the adequate long-term cleaning, operation, and maintenance of all stormwater facilities not owned or operated by the municipality, but located within its borders. Okay, so now that I've gone through all of the permit requirements and reasons to map, let's get into how the department is assisting permittees with mapping. So the department created a geodatabase template and an associated data dictionary for 7 stormwater features. These features currently include outfall pipes, stormwater management basins, subsurface infiltration and detention features, manufactured treatment devices, green infrastructure, storm drain inlets, and culverts. So we felt that these features were all easily collected as point features and would be a great starting point to mapping a stormwater system. The feature classes are currently being updated to account for the newly required MS4 infrastructure mapping requirements of the Tier A permit. Excuse me. Not every permittee operates in the same manner or has the same technological capabilities, so the geodatabase template had to be made available over a number of different collection methodologies to suit the needs of all permittees. And the first method created was a mapping tool using ArcGIS Online. This program allows you to collect points and associated information on a tablet, a smartphone, or a computer. The department secured a pool of free-to-use licenses for our permittees, and they are available upon request. Data that is collected will be stored in our database and can be downloaded at any time, as I will discuss later. Just one moment, please. Okay, the app used for collecting points through ArcGIS Online is called ArcGIS Field Maps and can be accessed through both the Google Play and Apple Store. Some of you may know the previous version was called Collector. The app itself is free to use, and once a license is obtained from the department, you can begin mapping. So once downloaded, the user can collect points by using the mobile device's GPS or by manually placing points using the background aerial. So when a point is placed, a list of descriptive attributes will show up and can be filled out. So this helps in determining things such as the type of basin or MTD, which is certainly important when conducting maintenance. This also helps to determine who is responsible for what facility. Most fields have drop-down menus like this, okay? And that makes it easy to fill out, and they're less time-consuming than, say, typing out each attribute in a field. Now, we realize that some of the permittees have access to GPS units and Trimble devices. So the department will no longer be providing a template for these devices. You may still use them, but we will need the information as a GIS layer or other acceptable electronic version. So for users who are already using ArcMap or ArcPro, we developed a geodatabase that could be downloaded from the website. That geodatabase can be populated on the computer and submitted back to the department to meet the mapping requirements. Again, everything here has drop-down menus, making it easy to use. The final method that's available for download from our website is a Microsoft Excel template, and it's populated with the same fields and drop-downs as the other templates. However, point coordinates, latitude and longitude all have to be manually entered into the spreadsheet before submittal. But this template also satisfies the electronic submission requirement. So as the department receives our permittees' stormwater infrastructure data, we're making it available to all permittees and the public in a public-facing layer managed by our Bureau of GIS. Stormwater infrastructure data points that have been submitted to the department are given a preliminary review for quality control and then posted to the NJDEP Open Data website for viewing and download. And if you are unfamiliar with the site, a simple browser search for NJDEP Open Data will take you right to it. And from there, you can search for data that's made public by the department. As we continue to review submitted data and receive new submissions, we'll continually post the data to this site. Now, if for some reason you notice errors in the data you submitted by reviewing it on the Open Data site, please reach out to your case manager, and they'll work with you to get the data corrected. Now, if it hasn't been done already, I will ask one of my colleagues to paste the link to the case managers list into the chat. I put it in the timekeeping log. Okay. So another good resource to use for getting stormwater infrastructure information and locations is the Rutgers H&H database. This website contains the location and information of any stormwater management basin that has been reviewed by the soil conservation districts. This is a great starting point for those looking to find the location of their basins. And I believe I also put this link, oh here, it's on the slide. And so you can access it there. Okay, so in summary, NJDEP created a database and data dictionary for the 7 stormwater infrastructure features that are required to be mapped by MS4 permittees, which is currently being updated to account for new mapping requirements in the 2023 Tier A permit. The data dictionary was made available over a number of different collection methodologies to suit the needs of all of our permittees. Existing data can be accessed via the NJDEP Open Data. And last, the department is willing to provide assistance in the form of training or by answering any questions that you may have. Again, please reach out to your case manager if you need any assistance along the way. Okay, so that wraps up the mapping portion of today's SWMDR training. And if you think of any questions, you can email the Stormwater Manager account directly. That's this one. Okay, or of course you could reach out to your case manager. Gabby is only one of the many case managers that we have. Okay, are there any other questions? I'm not an expert on this, so I would say please reach out to your case manager for more information. And so with that in mind, Changyi, are we moving on to the quiz next?
Yes.
Okay, so as I said, up next is the first quiz. That will be led by Anthony. So please stand by as we switch over, and staff will also paste the QR code and a link to the quiz in the chat. I'm assuming that by now the quiz link is live. Now, if you are going to decide to take the quiz on your computer, please open the link in a new window or tab so that you also stay in the Teams meeting. All right, be careful. Otherwise, you could get booted from the meeting. But you, of course, if you have a smartphone, use the camera to scan the QR code and take the quiz on your phone. Thanks, everyone. I really appreciate it.
Okay, thanks, Lisa. Just give me a minute to get the presentation up. Okay, so as Lisa mentioned, now it's time for a just a brief quiz. My name is Anthony Roblick, and I'm with the Municipal Stormwater Engineering Unit at the DEP. This is going to be quiz 1, and as was mentioned earlier, there's going to be a quiz administered at the end of each of the modules. And since the course is organized over 4 modules, we'll have a total of 4 quizzes. And also, all 4 quizzes must be completed by each attendee who wishes to receive either the CPC credits that we issue for attending the course or the certificate of course completion. So if anyone here is looking for either of those, which I assume most of you are, you're going to want to definitely complete all 4 quizzes. Also, just a note, the purpose of these quizzes, it's like a twofold purpose. So of course, being quizzes, they serve to gauge your understanding of the material that was covered today, but also they serve as a useful benchmark for us and how well we delivered the course material, particularly if the material is new to the course, which is the case this time with the recent rule amendments just this past year. So with that, let's move on to how to navigate to the quiz. So there will be a few ways to navigate to the quiz. The easiest, as Lisa mentioned, if you're using a smartphone to access the quiz, would be to scan this QR code here. It should also be posted in the chat, I believe. If not, it'll be posted shortly. And that will, the QR code will take you directly to the quiz, and that's hosted on SurveyMonkey. If you're not able to use the QR code, you can also access the quiz through the SurveyMonkey URL link that's posted in the chat and is also located at the bottom of this slide here. And a third way, if you want to access the quiz from our website, first you'll navigate to our training webpage, which is the link in the middle of the slide here. And then you're going to want to scroll down to the bottom of the page, and you'll notice links to each of the 4 quizzes, and they'll take you directly to the SurveyMonkey quiz. At this time, the only link that should be active is the quiz 1 link. So you're going to want to click on that if you're navigating that way. But once you reach the quiz, once you navigate to the quiz, you're going to see the title of the quiz should be the same as what's written here, Fall 2023 Stormwater Training Quiz 1. And so here is the QR code again, as well as the SurveyMonkey link. And we're going to leave this slide up while you're taking the quiz in case you need to access these links again. The quiz is made up of 19 questions, and it's over a few pages. And you must answer every question on a page before you're allowed to advance to the next page. and the quiz may only be taken once. So after everyone has taken the quiz, we'll meet back here for review of the correct answers. And we're going to allot 15 minutes to take the quiz. So right now it's 3:26. So we'll meet back here around 3:41 for the review. And I'll leave this slide up. Thanks.
Okay, we are going to allow a few extra minutes because it seems like, well, if I can get this to open, where is it? Roughly 2/3 of the people who've taken the quiz have finished, so don't feel rushed. We'll allow a few extra minutes, okay? If you are done, don't leave. A review of the quiz material counts as training, but you can go get a drink of water and be back in a couple of minutes, okay? Thank you.
Okay, welcome back, everyone. It's 3:43, so it's an extra couple of minutes. Looks like we're up to over 90% on the completion rate, so we're going to go ahead and start the review. All right, and we'll begin with question 4. The 6 minimum measures are required by what type of mandate? And the answer is A, federal. So this is something that was covered in the federal background presentation by Suna. It's the NIPD's Phase 2 stormwater regulations, and they require that the 6 minimum measures be implemented for small MS4s. So this is mandated at the federal level. Question 5. Reviewing site plans is required to comply with which statewide basic requirement? And the answer is C, post-construction stormwater management. So it's part of the statewide basic requirements that the permittee develop, update, implement, and enforce its stormwater management program to address stormwater runoff from both the new development and redevelopment. Okay, question 6. Who is responsible for enforcing the post-construction stormwater management program? And the answer to this question is D, the MS4 permittee. So this is kind of linked to the previous question, and it's the responsibility of the MS4 permittee to ensure to enforce the post-construction stormwater management program. All right, question 7. What is the definition of a major development under the Municipal Stormwater Control Ordinance? And the answer to this is B. It's all development projects that result in land disturbance of 1 acre or more, and any additional development defined as major development by municipality's stormwater control ordinance. And this is pursuant to NJAC 7:8-4.2 for the purposes of a municipal stormwater management plan and elements, which include the SCO, or the Stormwater Control Ordinance. Major development is limited to projects that ultimately disturb 1 or more acres of land. However, the municipality may adopt a more stringent definition of major development to align with the definition found in section 1.2 of the stormwater rule. Okay, question 8. Which of these can be used to demonstrate compliance with the water quantity design with the water quantity design and performance standard? And the answer to this is B. So design stormwater management measures so that the post-construction peak runoff rates for the current and projected 2, 10, and 100-year storm events are 50, 75, and 80% respectively of the pre-construction peak runoff rates. So the nuances in the wording here, but that was covered in the stormwater overview presentation. So moving on to question 9, which of the following is the New Jersey Water Quality Design Storm? The answer to this is A, 1 1/4 inches in 2 hours. So the New Jersey Water Quality Design Storm is a storm event with a variable intensity that results in 1 1/4 inches of rainfall in 2 hours. And this is defined in the stormwater management rules. Okay, question 10. Which of the following would meet the groundwater recharge standard? So the answer to this is D, all of the above. So a major development has the option of infiltrating the increase in the projected 2-year design storm runoff volume or maintaining the average annual groundwater recharge. And we have the groundwater recharge spreadsheet available on our website in order to assist a site in meeting that second option. The exception is if a site is within an urban redevelopment area or PA1 and is fully developed, or portions of the site are fully developed, then the groundwater recharge requirement wouldn't be applicable to those portions of the site. All right, question 11 is a true or false. A project located in a tidal flood hazard area is always exempt from the water quantity standard, and the answer to this is B, false. So in tidal flood hazard areas, the water quantity standard does not apply only if the applicant can demonstrate that the increased volume of stormwater runoff will not increase flood damage below the point of discharge. So there must be a demonstration through a hydrologic and hydraulic analysis that the increased volume, the change in timing, the increased rate of runoff, or a combination of those will not result in additional flood damage below the point of discharge. And the only time when that analysis would not be required is if the discharge is directly into an ocean, a bay, or an inlet, or a reach of any watercourse between its confluence with one of those water bodies and the first water control structure. Okay, question 12, another true or false. BMPs from table 5.2 can be used to meet stormwater quality requirements without obtaining a waiver or variance from NJAC 7:8-5.3. And the answer to this is false. So a waiver or variance is required in order to use BMPs from table 5.2 for stormwater runoff quality or groundwater recharge. BMPs from table 5.2 may only be used to meet the stormwater runoff quantity requirement without a waiver or variance. Question 13, true or false? A gravel area used for vehicle parking during events that are regularly held should be considered a motor vehicle surface. And the answer to this is true. So a surface that is intended to be used by motor vehicles beyond an emergency situation should be considered as part of the total regulated motor vehicle surface. However, if a surface does not allow for motor vehicle use outside of an emergency, the review agency may determine that the area can be excluded from the total regulated motor vehicle surface. Okay, question 14. Which of the following is required in a maintenance plan? And the answer to this is D, all of the above. So this was covered in the maintenance presentation. The maintenance plan must include preventative and corrective maintenance tasks, and that's specific to the BMPs used on site. The name, address, and phone number of the responsible party, and it must also include cost estimates. Okay, question 15. Which of the following cannot be the responsible party for maintenance of a stormwater BMP? And the answer to this is D, a homeowner that owns only one home in a large residential development. So the stormwater management rules at 7:8-5.8C state that responsibility for maintenance shall not be assigned or transferred to the owner or tenant of an individual property in a residential development or project, unless it's the rare case where the owner or tenant owns or leases the entire residential development or project. Question 16. At a minimum, how often is the responsible party required to evaluate the effectiveness of the maintenance plan? And the answer to this is C, 1 year. So the stormwater management rules state that the responsible party must evaluate the effectiveness of the maintenance plan at least once per year and adjust the plan as needed. All right, moving on, question 17. It's another true or false. All maintenance plans for stormwater management measures must be recorded on the deed of record for each property on which the maintenance must be undertaken if the responsible party is not a public agency. And the answer to this is true. So stormwater management rules at 7:8-5.8D state that if a person is responsible for maintenance and they're not a public agency, the maintenance plan and any future revisions shall be recorded upon the deed of record for each property on which the maintenance must be undertaken. Question 18, true or false? You must purchase a handheld GPS unit, such as a Trimble GPS unit, to complete the MS4 mapping requirements. And the answer to this is false. So you don't have to purchase an expensive handheld GPS unit to do the mapping. With the mapping app that was developed by the DEP, you can use your smartphone, you can use a tablet or a laptop to get the coordinates needed to complete the mapping requirement. So if you don't have a Trimble unit, that's fine, and you can complete the mapping through other means. So moving on to the last question, 19, true or false? The department charges MS4 permittees a small monthly fee to use the ArcGIS online mapping tool. And the answer to this is false. So the online mapping tool is available free of charge through the department. The department has purchased licenses in batches, which are available to you. So if you need a license to use the mapping app, you can reach out to the Municipal Stormwater Permitting Unit, and they can assist you with that. So that concludes the quiz review, and I'm going to kick it back to Changyi to close us out.
Thanks, Anthony. We will, I think the module 1 training is complete. You may leave the training